and welcome to this week's Beyond the Bio. I'm delighted to be joined by Sandra Garlick MBE, who is a UK-based visibility strategist and speaker mentor who helps women in business go from hidden to high profile through speaking, personal brand, and strategic visibility. With over 25 years experience on stage, Sandra works with business owners, speakers, and experts who want to be recognized for their expertise, build authority, and turn visibility into real opportunities. She's the founder of the Woman Who Awards, which celebrated its 10th anniversary in 2025, and the host of a long-running podcast, Mic Drop Moments. Sandra was awarded an MBE for services to women in business in 2020 and believes that speaking isn't about being perfect, it's about being purposeful. So we've got loads to chat about. First of all, though, how did you get into what you do?
Gosh, well, we won't do the broken ankle story because I've but basically I broke my ankle, and I capture all my ideas because I'm constantly innovating. And I learnt that you can't do everything all at once. You just have to focus on one thing. So I had an ideas book, and many years ago, I captured this idea for Woman Who and didn't do anything with it because I was on the corporate hamster wheel and the time wasn't right. I was bringing up two teenage boys on my own and they needed me to support them financially. So it was too risky to start my own business at that time. Although I did ultimately set up a solicitor's practice. I ran that for 8 years and then I broke my ankle, and I grabbed that ideas book and thought, what shall I do as a little project while I'm laid up in plaster? And found the Woman Who idea and thought, well, right, I'll run an event, I'll do it in 90 days, and off I did.
That's amazing. I love those stories where just something comes out of something that's this little seed and it grows into all sorts of stuff. So obviously you are known a lot for speaking. Tell me what you think the difference is between doing talks, which a lot of us want to do or a lot of us do, and using talking or speaking to strategically build authority.
Well, I believe people buy from people. I'm totally convinced of that. And I think if we can share stories and people latch onto something we say, they naturally feel aligned to us. And then it doesn't really matter what we're selling. They just feel drawn to you and they look for a way to work with you. Maybe not now, but at some point in the future. And I was trained to be a speaker when I trained to do law because we had to stand up in front of judges and tell stories. And we had to convince the judges that our client was in the right and the other party was not. I mean, obviously factual. We couldn't tell fibs, but we did it by telling stories. And I was trained to speak to the media and all sorts of things. And I started to believe that actually I could use this same speaking to speak to audiences. And I started delivering training and seminars, which is different to speaking, but I built my confidence that way. And then I started inserting the stories into the speaking and realized that I was attracting clients in a very different way. And you become memorable, and people would contact me years later and say, I remember I heard you speak at this event and you told the story of, I didn't need you then, but I need you now. And I kept your number.
I love that, because I think when you do something well, whether it be speaking or anything else, or even just networking, when it's the right time, if you've made that connection and been memorable through storytelling, then people do come back, don't they?
Yeah.
They really do. If someone that is looking at speaking, whether they do it already or whether they're looking to get into it and they want to be known for one thing, how do they best shape a talk that reinforces their message every time?
I talk about speaking like having a stick of rock. You go to Blackpool, you get your stick of rock, and wherever you bite it, it says Blackpool inside. And that's how you need to think of your speaking. At any point throughout your talk or keynote or whatever you're doing, it needs to have that message, that core message running right through the center of it. So that at any point in time, if anyone's in any doubt about what your message is and what they're supposed to do with it, it runs like a fine line all the way through. And I think a lot of speakers forget that and they go off on a tangent, or I've sat in audiences before and I thought, that was a lovely talk, but what was she trying to say? You want your audience to actually say, wow. And you want them to take action and take it away. And I always say when I'm speaking, if one person in the audience is inspired to take action, job done.
And what's the best way to anchor it to that one thing? Is it to kind of keep bringing everything back to that and peppering in the stories, or is there a technique?
The way I teach my clients is to find their stories first and then grab their message and say, right, this is the message I want to deliver today, because the message will be different for every audience. And that's the other thing I see speakers do. They roll out the same talk everywhere they go and they don't consider the audience. You don't speak for yourself, you speak for the audience. And so you tailor that talk and then you bring in the stories to demonstrate a fact. You never, ever bring a story in just a random story, because it has to demonstrate a point. It has to have meaning to the audience, and you bring it back to that message.
And you say that speaking isn't about being perfect, it's about being purposeful. What does purposeful look like in practice?
Again, it's not trying to look too polished. It doesn't matter if you forget your words on stage. People then connect to the human part of you. And I've never, ever sat in an audience thinking, I want that speaker to fail, or I don't want her to get her words out. And nobody knows what you're going to say till it comes out of your mouth anyway. So I think people beat themselves up and try and be too perfect when they forget the purpose of being in the room. And that is the number one thing. Why are you there? And who are you trying to reach in the audience? And that, I think if you keep those two things in mind, you really will have impact on your audience.
And when you talk about having impact and connecting with the audience, do you think you need a different approach depending on the size of the audience? So I'm thinking about, just before we started recording today, I was talking to you about I'm doing a keynote at a conference this weekend, and there's 500 people in that audience. Do I need to connect with them or take a different approach to connecting with them versus if I was doing a talk for 30 or 50 people?
If I'm talking to a really small audience, obviously you can make a better connection. I very regularly jump off stage and go into my audience. If I've got a lovely small audience, I'll connect with them and I'll, ask them for questions and I'll jump into the audience with my mic. I love doing that. Whereas when you've got 500 or 1,000 or something like that, it's more like a performance. And then you've got to make it so interactive, because the lifespan of their attention is about 5 to 7 minutes. So they're going to switch off. They're going to start scrolling. They're going to get bored. If they're sat at the back, how are you going to make that connection? So you've got to pepper it with stuff that actually brings them back to you. And there's all sorts of tools and techniques you can do that, but it is a very different approach because you've got a much larger number and you can't get that. You might connect with the people on the front row, but you need to be, the people sitting right at the back need to feel as if you're talking directly to them.
I'm going to have to give that some more thought in my preparation as to how do I give those people at the back the same experience as those that are right at the front. I've got a few ideas. I've got a few things planned out, so hopefully I'll manage that. I think speaking seems to be the in thing at the moment. Everyone wants to be a speaker. They all want to get paid thousands of pounds to speak and be on the biggest stages. And people need to build up to that. You can't do that straight away. What are the biggest mistakes that you see in early stage speakers when they're trying to look credible and they're trying to aim for those bigger gigs?
I talk a lot about fees versus frees. So, don't underestimate speaking for free. And I will speak for free on occasions. And what I do is I approach it in a different way, because I look at it. I might go and speak for free somewhere and walk out with thousands of pounds worth of business, because I've connected with somebody, they come on board as a client, and there's a spend to that. So never underestimate who is in the room, and never underestimate who the person in the room is connected to, because likewise you can dismiss an audience by thinking they're not your target audience, but you don't know who they know. So there are different rules and things, and I've done a lot of both. And I must admit, I do like the freedom of speaking for free, because then you've got more control over it.
Yeah, there's some really great points there. Something that I've noticed in the last year or so, particularly as I've become a bit more intrigued by the online business world, because I've always traditionally worked in real life, in person stuff. This online world's still quite new to me, and I see it more in there. Is this whole thing around paying to speak, which blows my mind, because I'm like, why would anyone want to do that? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't pay speak. I will pay to sponsor, and if there's speaking as part of it, I don't consider it as paid to speak. But I've only done it once, and I was integral to the event. But I will not pay to speak, and I won't have people pay to speak at my events either, because I believe if you're paying to speak, and I've seen it happen, I've been to events where I've seen speaker, and they've paid to speak, and you've got no control, because they're paying for the privilege. It's a sponsored spot, and they literally, some of them just stand and sell at you, or you've got no quality control. My speakers, when they speak at my events, they're my members, they're people on my masterminds. They audition to speak at my events. And I think that's a great experience for them to go through. They have to pitch to me and they have to audition. It's only a 2-minute thing on a video. But if they can't do that, how are they going to stand on a stage and connect with the audience?
If it's free, there can be some real benefits, particularly when you're starting out and actually want to get that practice under your belt. I totally agree. But for me, that whole paying to speak thing feels really uncomfortable because it tends to be the people that can least afford to do it that feel like they have to do that. So I struggle with that. But as well, absolutely what you've said there around the quality, particularly if it's in a ticketed event that people are paying to attend. They, I think, wouldn't want to attend an event where people have paid to speak and therefore are just selling at them, or like you say, they're just not very good. Like you want people that are quality.
And I get it because I run events and you do have to raise sponsorship. So I've withdrawn all my sponsorships this year and I'm making them into experiences because what I want. So people might get a speaking opportunity, but there'll be far more than that. It won't just be you're paying to be on my stage. And I'm sponsoring an event in a couple of months and I'm a headline sponsor for the day. But I get to speak. I've not paid to speak as such because I'm headline sponsor. And so it's slightly different. And there's a whole package built around that. And that's what I want to do. I don't want people paying to stand on my stage. What I want them to do is come and have an experience that gives them visibility and credibility, that they get to do something during the day. And if they get to speak on my stage, it will be facilitated in a way that it's not them standing there and speaking a sales pitch, really.
What do you think someone should do in the 24 hours after a talk to turn that visibility opportunity of being on stage into leads or maybe partnerships or press or whatever that might be? What are some great tips of things people can do?
Well, I always try and take selfies on the day. So I always take a selfie with my audience and then I tag in people. I use social media a lot after an event and I tag in the organizer. And if you're an organizer of an event and your speakers are tagging you and they're promoting the event before it, during it and after it, you're more likely to come away and make those connections. So if I'm speaking at an event, I'm promoting it right the way up until I go. I'm promoting it on the day. So while I'm sat in the audience, I'm, cheering, supporting the other speakers in different parts of the day. And I become a cheerleader of that event. And then after the event, I'm sharing it. And if I meet people on the day, I'm taking selfies with them, I'm connecting with them, and then just reach out to them afterwards. And just, it might just be a message. A lot of people connect with me on socials after I've spoken at an event, and that's where the connections start. And then people come into my sort of sphere and they start to sign up to my newsletter and things like that. And then they gravitate towards you. I'm not a hard sell person.
I've started in the last maybe 2 years having something up front in my presentation where I'm asking them specifically to connect with me, and I do it again at the end. And usually, because I'm talking about personal branding most of the time in my talks, it's very neat because I can be saying, look, I'm practicing what I preach here and I'm wanting to connect with you. So please do. And then when you come off stage, you've just got loads and loads of followers or connections, which works really, really well. You've got to sometimes just tell people what you want them to do.
The power of the QR code, and I when I'm working with my speakers, I say, if you tell people to do nothing, they will do nothing. So you have to tell people what to do. Connect with me on Instagram here. Download free resources here. As soon as somebody downloads a free resource, they're coming into your world. A lot of people, I find they're connecting on all different channels at the moment, which can sometimes be a nightmare. But I drive all my traffic to one place. And I find by driving all my traffic to one place, I've got more control over where the connections are coming in.
How do you recommend people build a speaking pipeline so it's consistent and not random? Because I don't know about you. I need some advice on this, because some months I can be speaking literally a couple of times a week for the whole month. And I find it really draining, because I like to be high energy when I'm on the stage so that I can connect better with people. And as well, it's, making sure that if you've done any slides, I mean, I'm fortunate my team will make them look good, and that's the bit probably that takes the time. But, I need to write them, I need to practice, I might need to travel to an event. Those things take time and distract from some of the other stuff that I need to do within the business. Yet then some months I'll go, oh my gosh, I haven't got anything this month. So what's the best way to go about doing it so it's intentional and there's a pipeline rather than being random?
Yeah, I mean, I have obviously a visibility strategy that works right the way through the year. So I work in 90 days. So I'm always looking at the next 90 days and the 90 days beyond that. And I made a huge mistake last year. I put 6 events into 10 days, and I was ill. I ended up being ill because they were all over the place. And I usually build that buffer time in, but I teach all my clients to speak without notes and without slides if they can. So all you need is one holding slide with a QR code and how to connect with you. And that's all dealt with. So you don't have to worry about that. And then people gravitate towards you. They're listening to what you're saying rather than reading off the slides. But to build in those gaps and things like that, I just put myself out there. I just say to people, once you speak somewhere, then let the people know there. And if you'd like me to speak at your event, I've got some availability later on this year, or whenever that might be. But I find that people approach me. I don't need, because I've been doing it for so long, and I do turn down events as well. I really look at each one that I'm approached for and think, what's the purpose of this? And does it fulfill my objectives? When you're invited to speak at the Plumbers and Heating Association sales conference, and you think, well, actually, they're not my target audience. I don't know anything about plumbing and heating. I call a plumber and heating engineer. It's not my bag. So I referred it to somebody else because I knew that wasn't the right room for me. And I really look at the rooms. I ask a lot of questions about who the audience are going to be and whether actually I can connect with them, because there's nothing worse than going to an event and the audience doesn't want you there, or they're not expecting you. And I once went on tour for a financial organization, and I delivered the first one, and they just didn't want it. They didn't want to be sat there. They were just waiting for the free lunch. So I had to completely rethink it and think, how am I going to engage these guys and get them interactive and get them interested? So you really have to do your homework. So I don't just say yes to everything, and I don't always fill the gaps, because I think the right things will come when you put yourself and actually don't say yes to everything.
And when you're doing talks, would you recommend that people have a couple of signature talks so that they can talk without notes, without slides, and have that confidence? Or do you think people should have a suite of different things that they can talk about?
I build each talk and know what I'm going to say. I mean, yes, I have been in a conference where the organisers are running around flapping, and I've gone up and said, everything okay? And they've said, one of our speakers hasn't turned up. And I've said, would you like me to speak? And they've said, well, I'm in the room anyway, so I know what the conference is about. And I said, how long have I got? Oh, can you speak for this amount of time? What would you like me to focus it on? Can you focus on this? Yeah, right, fine, done. And that's how I want my clients to be. I want them to have the skills to be able to take a keynote that they've got and morph it into something that they need based on their expertise. And I say, your talk's going to be educational, motivational, or inspirational, basically. And you've got your bank of stories. So as long as you've got that core message running through, you can adapt it and build in those stories. So I tend to get my clients with about 3 core keynotes that they can adapt for different circumstances.
Sandra, you were awarded an MBE for services to women in business. What did that recognition change for you, if anything, in terms of the opportunities that have come your way, or how you show up publicly?
It actually came right at the start of the pandemic. So I got my MBE, couldn't go to my, it was one of the first investitures of the year, and I couldn't go. My dad passed away at the same time. It all just imploded, as did my business at that time, because it was based around face-to-face events.
Yeah.
And we all know what happened to that. So actually it did me a huge favor, because the only way I could celebrate it was online. And that's when I launched my online offerings. And so it was like the perfect storm, in effect. I didn't have that sort of what am I going to do moment. I still believed that my events were going to go ahead, but I'd already started building an online presence and launched something right at the start of the pandemic. So it actually gave me a huge boost. I think the post I put out saying I got the MBE in January 2020, LinkedIn actually commented on it. And within 40 minutes, it went viral. And I think I had something like 800,000 views within 24 hours or something like that. Yeah. So it just put me everywhere. And it was a huge gift, really, recognition for the work that I'd done up to that point.
And do you find that, because obviously that's now what, 6 years ago that you got that, do you find that people still ask you about it all the time whenever you go anywhere?
Every single time. Every single time. You know what it's like. They just say, "Oh, what did you get your MBE for?" It's almost at the very end of the conversation or the very end of the interaction. They'll come up, "Do you mind me asking what you got your MBE for?" And
Yeah.
I'm proud of it. I know not everyone accepts them, but I'm proud of it. Somebody took the time to put me forward, and I felt that it would be wrong of me. They get references and all sorts, and it would have been wrong of me to just say, "No, I'm sorry, I'm not
I
accepting
think
that."
it's the ultimate recognition. It's
Yes.
so up there. It's, they don't just hand them out to anybody, as we know, it's such a lengthy process. And I think you absolutely should accept it. Who did your investiture?
Well, it was due to be Prince Charles, now King Charles, but obviously it got cancelled. And then by the time we were going back round, I had 2 dates to choose from, and I picked the date that was closest to my son's birthday, and got her Princess Royal, Princess Anne.
I
We had a
got Princess Anne.
we had a lovely chat, and it almost, you forget your surroundings. We got so involved in the chat. Sometimes I have to pinch myself and remember, that actually I need to celebrate it. I need to talk about it more.
So if anyone listening isn't already connected to you, where's the best place for them to find you?
I'm on Instagram at Sandra Garlick MBE, or they can find everything on my website, womanwho.co.uk, and every single thing is on there.
Amazing. And we'll pop links to both of those in the show notes to make it super easy for people to find and connect with you. Sandra, it's been great speaking to you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me here. It's been a great opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you're serious about growing your profile, take our free profile assessment quiz to see where you're at right now and get hints and tips on how to improve your score. You'll find the link to the quiz in the show notes. If you've enjoyed the episode, it would be mint if you'd subscribe, like, and leave a review. See you next Monday.